Lakeland PBS presents Common Ground, brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Production funding of Common Ground is made possible in part by First National Bank Bemidji, continuing their second century of service to the community. Member FDIC. Welcome to Common Ground. I'm producer-director Scott Knudsen. In this two-segment episode made by the two newest additions to Lakeland's legacy production team, we visit the Butter and Dairy Museum in Vergas, Minnesota, and the crowing Viking Fest in Brainerd.
Welcome and welcome to the Crowing Viking Festival. It's August 21st. And the festival opened at 10 a.m. this morning and it goes till 4:30 this afternoon. This is our second annual festival. We weren't, of course, able to do it last year. There are a ton of fun things to do here.
Viking Fest is a celebration of all things Viking. There's so much misinformation, and the first one is that Vikings had horns. The horns came about from an 1800s Wagner opera. The costume designer thought that horns on helmets would be cool, and they are, but that wasn't what the real Vikings were about. There's a lot of misconceptions about the Vikings, my ancestors, and so this celebrates all things legitimately real Viking. So we came up with that slogan, Real Vikings, No Horns. There's a lot to learn. They're very interesting people, very sophisticated, very structural society. Women were held in high esteem, and there's a lot to know about the Viking culture.
I'm Julie Guth, and I'm the coordinator for the Crowing Viking Festival. And I'm one of a group of 7 people who do the planning for this. And I love Vikings, and so I wanted to share actual Viking culture, real Vikings, no horns, with people in the area and from all over.
I'm Dan Hegstead, and I am a volunteer with the Crowing Viking Festival. I do a lot of the PR and marketing, and we're a small group, so I do kind of whatever needs doing. One of the reasons there's so many people at the Crowing Viking Festival is because there's just so much to see and do here. If you look around, you see so many families. And who wouldn't want to come to Brainerd, Minnesota for a nice weekend in the summer and enjoy this? And the kids are having a great time. There's a whole building of kids' crafts and things for kids to do.
Jacob here, my new friend, was showing me the crafts that he made. This is a flying dragon.
Nobody else made it with the flame, because I thought it would be cool, so it's breathing fire. This is my shield. The middle is supposed to be like an eyeball.
There's also rune writing. Kids can write their names in runes, and it's in self-hardening clay. And there are a few other crafts in the building as well. It's been a really popular area.
We have lots of food for the whole family. And then behind me, the Viking encampment is what, if these Vikings were traveling and they stopped for a few days, this is what you'd see.
I'm here at the Potter. We have almost everything here. We have pottery, we have wood supplies, we have jewelry, we have drinking horns. There's someone working on a warp-weighted loom over there, which is what they use to create the sails for the ships, among other things. There's so many things here. All the crafts. There's a blacksmith, people doing open fire cooking. also have somebody who wrote an epic poem that he has illustrated in a book that's going to be around here too, and he's going to be doing readings.
Some lumpish rings, a gilded aurochs horn, crusted with gems. A sentry shrieked, the devils thronged, and all but 30 of my men were torn to shreds.
We have the mock battles. The people are really enjoying that. It's family friendly, but still very realistic. They do a great job of balancing that, keeping that family friendly.
The Vikings have always fascinated me, and of course, you know, I'm a Norwegian American, at least partly, and so it's part of my cultural heritage. And so I've always wanted to know more, and I was absolutely delighted to find out that the Vikings did more than just raiding. You know, that there was a whole really complex culture that was highly artistic, for one thing, and the ships that they built were state of the art.
I love this event because it's real. Real Vikings, no horns. It's fun, but the organizers were serious that it's not going to be silly. This isn't a costume party. This is about the real Vikings, my heritage. When I did the genetic test, it showed a very small part of Norway and a little bit of Sweden. That's where my people are, is right there. So I'm all Scandinavian, and this celebrates my ancestors. And they were some really interesting people. They did some pretty nasty stuff, there's no question about that. But the culture was something to be celebrated, and I'm really glad to be involved in that.
It started because I attended a Viking festival in Moorhead, Hjemkomst, and I thought it was so interesting, and I started talking to the reenactors, and I thought, wow, wouldn't that be a great event to bring to the Brainerd community, because it's totally different from anything else that we have here.
When we did the first Viking festival 2 years ago in Nisswa, we had no idea how many people were going to come. 200, 300.
We had almost 950 people at that first one.
So we knew we were doing the right thing. Nisswa was great, but just not enough room to even host the 1,000 people that came. But here we are at the Crow Wing County Fair, which is such a great venue for us because we have plenty of room to do the mock battles, a nice location here for the Viking encampment, tons of free parking, all the food vendors, we have all that infrastructure, power and so forth that they need. Animals, you can have animals at the fairgrounds, so we've got the horses and the sheep, and we can expand that.
I hope even bigger and better than this. We'd like to add reenactors every year. We'd certainly like even more vendors who are doing Viking-related things to come in.
But this could be a huge event for years to come. We could have thousands of people coming to the Crow Wing Viking Festival. I really think it's a regional event. There's a lot of Norwegians in North Dakota, Wisconsin, all over Minnesota. I think people can come here to Brainerd and enjoy this for years to come.
For the runes he wanted to win.
We're in Gordon's Butter and Dairy Museum, which is located in the lower level of the bank in Virgis. Gordon owned the bank, and he was president and chairman of the board here at the bank. Gordon loved this sign that's behind me that says, "What they have created, let us preserve." If you do not know where you came from, or if you do not know what the beginning and the history of it was, it's really hard to understand where you're at. And Gordon truly believed that, so he's like, okay, I loved farming.
He was 11 years old when he was milking cows. Once before he went to school and after school. It was hard work. They did a lot of the stuff themselves, even built the barns and all the sheds they built, themselves, of course with neighbors' help. It was an interesting time. And this is back in the 30s.
He was very proud of his heritage growing up on a farm. Even at the bank here, he loved it when the farmers would come in and visit, and farming was always in his heart, and stayed there.
He loved the simplicity of it. He loved the genuine, honest, hard work of it. As he became older and went into a different profession, obviously, he still kept that passion.
Back in the day, through the bank here, we also clerked auction sales, and so I think a lot of the stuff in the museum here, he picked up at those auction sales too by clerking them. And so he was always the first one to bid on that stuff that came up on the auction sale.
When he got that first piece at an auction sale, and then the next piece, and then people started hearing about it, and I think what happened in the community too, people started hearing there was a place to put some of their items that they had the same passion about, that they wanted people to remember.
You collect one thing and then turn into 600 items, so you know how that goes. But he really loved collecting. If you rode around with him, we didn't miss an antique store. I mean, now it's probably that high, and we hit every one between here and Minneapolis and Arizona, so it was kind of fun.
Siblings would take turns driving him back and forth to Scottsdale, Arizona, where he wintered. You never took the interstate, you always took back roads, and because that's where all the antique shops were.
There's always one churn that he's been looking for forever, even till the day he died, was a number 10 Daisy churn. And we've stopped at every antique store between Scottsdale, Arizona and Vergas, Minnesota looking for that number 10 Daisy churn, and we never found one.
Here you had Gordon's vision of being able to display not only the churns, but then he was able to have enough space that he could expand it. And all that you're going to see that's curated, that's Gordon. He displayed it. So this is where it all started. This is the very first butter churn that Gordon purchased at an auction sale. And then he bought another one, and then he bought another one, and then all of a sudden it turned into, like you're going to see, over 600 items here. In this area here are just a lot of the different churns that he had. We've got some of the cream separators over here. When you stop and think of this, this is how milk was delivered. This is an actual liquid container that the milk was delivered in. I think the thing that always intrigues me too is when you look at these butter churns, nothing's electric. There was a lot of work that was put into all of this. And so whether I think you were shaking the jar or turning it or whatever, there is just, it wasn't electric. It, to get to that point, it took some muscle. Maybe that's why everybody was so in shape back then. Gordon liked to display things. One of Gordon's other passions was woodworking, and so he built a lot of these display cases. He built all the little items that, that would hold what we've got here is the butter molds. These butter molds are so intriguing because they are so intricate in what they have as far as like a pineapple or a leaf or just a starburst. And then that would kind of be your signature thing when you would take butter to maybe a family gathering or whatever. You would put the butter in there and you put it down on a plate and that mold would go on top, and then the top of your butter would just have that beautiful whatever your symbol was. And so a lot of the different butter molds, and then these were the paddles. Obviously these are smaller ones, but I think one of the things that Gordon he loved De La Val, as you can see. He collected the different signs, and anything De La Val he would end up buying. But this right here is a Franklin cream cooler. And Ed Franklin, who started Franklin Fence here in Virgis, he invented this. And so this was a pretty big deal. It was a new cream grading law thing that came out through the dairy states, and it improved the quality of everything. And he invented this, and there were testimonials, and it got to be a big deal. And so Gordon ended up with one of those Franklin cream coolers, and he was always pretty proud of the fact that the guy from Virgis is who invented that. And as you can see back here, you know, he kind of got into some of the De La Valle, just the little intricate type things. They had letter openers, you know, just some of those things that would come out at Christmas time. And then up above, and you'll see this throughout the whole museum, are the different cheese boxes. And so anytime, if you couldn't find that Daisy number 10 churn, you had to buy a cheese box because there's a cheese box from just about every creamery that you can find from Arizona to Minnesota. So that's what those are for too. All right, what we've got here is just a beautiful case that Gordon loved to display probably some of the more breakable things, and because he was always hoping that kids would come down here. And so he'd have some of those little butter dishes down there that definitely are antiques, and some of the little came from the creamery here, the different things that they would use to test the different cream and different things that would make sure that everything was working good there. This is where he kind of put his books and everything. That cow that he got from Germany, this is a hand-carved cow that a neighbor of his went to Germany, and then they were talking about the Butter Museum, and so they came. This came in the mail. I remember when that happened. We keep in prominent place here. This is the first picture of Gordon milking cows back when he was a young kid. You don't see a lot of machines there. I think it was pretty much done by hand. And I think one of the things here too that I always think about are these watch fobs. You see the De La Valle, you see the cow, and I think of this only because you get to a point where you've probably collected everything that you can as far as molds and separators and churns and things like that. This was one of the last things that he was working on collecting before his death. And I know that he was looking for those watch fobs, you know, in a lot of different places, and was trying to grow his collection a little bit in that. He became very fond of having the watch fobs. These little milk covers here, you know, again, just like the butter boxes and just like the cheese boxes, these were what identified you as a dairy or as a farm that would deliver milk. This would have your name, Shady Lane or Katsky Farm or whatever it was on it. And so these little milk caps that went on top of the milk bottle like this, which you can see, that identified who your dairy was. So we're back in the area where when the creamery here in Virgis closed, Gordon obtained, of course, a lot of the things that were there. You've got like your test tubes. This machine here would, you know, test the different cream content and that for as it was making butter. You would have all of that. You would have the cream cans, which would bring in the cream. You know, the farmers would actually just bring in their cream cans, and the scales. Obviously, this goes back before it would get to the creamery. You know, these were what were used on the farm after you got past that point where you had to do the milking by hand. And then what was in this display case is, you know how in Christmases, all of the businesses, when they used to be able to economically afford it, they would give that Christmas gift away to their patrons, to their customers. And these are some of the different, whether it be the little cream pitchers, or, you know, some years you had utensils, and so there's a display of that too. We also have, goes back to the dairy days, and so it's fun. He kept a lot of the posters from that too. And so you can see the evolution of that from how it was it was a big deal in town. It was a lot of fun. And he had them dressed up all the way back there to the 60s. Okay, so what you're seeing here is, you know, obviously all the milk bottles and stuff, but these are the churns. You notice the lone spot up here where the Daisy number 10 is missing, and that spot will stay there until we get that number 10. But these are the churns that Gordon just, I mean, he loved. We would take these too when we would go to dairy days, and would just take them and put that cream in, and kids would watch all of the cream turn to butter. What we've got here, which is really an interesting machine to me, and couldn't you just see a kid just loving this? You sit on the seat there. A farmer just outside of Virgis had this. You sit on the seat there, and then you, of course, attach this to the cow for the milking. And then it's got the hand, you would take your feet like that, and it would go, and it was just kind of a way that you didn't have to use your hands, and you got to build up those leg muscles. A lot of people talk about, okay, Gordon, why do you have a Maytag wash machine in your butter museum? But, you know, it's not just the mixers that we get now that have all the attachments with the pasta. Back then, they figured that out. You put an attachment to the wash machine and it'll churn your butter. And so Gordon got one of those Maytags that had the attachment to churn the butter, and then of course the information regarding it, but that was a lot of fun for him to obtain that. So we are in the Overflow Room is what I would call it, because this room here was created when Gordon had too many things in the other room that we were in. But it's just created a nice area to add some extra things, some of the bigger things. This cream separator right here is actually, there's only 2 of them in the whole United States that anybody knows about. When Gordon obtained it, the people that he got it from said, you know, it should actually be in a museum. And then cream carts and the cream cans, and of course more cheese boxes. But one fun thing that we have here is it's an old Vergas street light. And so this was the actual street light. There's a photograph here with it that shows people would go around at night and they would light those lights up on the streets, and, you know, by hand again, of course. It wasn't an electric thing. And so I think I mentioned the Land O'Lakes Creamery Christmas ornaments and things too. And so, you know, he got into that with Land O'Lakes and just really supporting our area dairy people and dairy production areas. And so all the milk bottles here too, so it's a nice spot. And of course, I think a lot of people understand what this is, because I think that a lot of people have in their homes. It was one of the old coolers too, and so those are kind of fun. And so here we are in Gordon's Overflow Room, but what it was able to create in here was just another nice display case, a beautiful display case. And this one here obviously has always been one of my favorites because it's the dome butter dishes. These are very valuable, very beautiful, intricate pieces. I don't think that you would find these on your typical farm table for lunch every day, but if the family was coming for a Sunday dinner or some special event, you know, they would use a butter dish, something like this. Gordon, like I said earlier, was always very loyal to the Vergas Creamery and the people that worked at the creamery. And this gentleman right here his family donated this because he was the creamery manager for a number of years. And what you've got there is you've got items that were used actually in the creamery. So he liked to be able to showcase those items, but he also liked to be able to showcase the person who helped, you know, promote dairy, who helped work in the creamery, and just was part of that passion of let us preserve what has been created. So if you come down to Gordon's Dairy and Butter Museum, you cannot walk away without one of his books. This chronicles a lot of different information, a lot of different pictures, and one of the old Vergas butter dairy boxes. And so they're here, and you're welcome to take one home with you. And so that when you go home, when somebody sees them, they can say, oh, where's that? And you can say, well, it's located in the Vergas State Bank, lower level. You can go check it out because it's a piece of history that we just want to preserve. You come down here and you just kind of step back in time. You just take a little bit of time, and if you do a little bit of reading, you just understand that, oh man, somebody actually 60 years ago was handling that butter dish and were putting butter on the table for their family. There's something really cool about that. The bank is open every day during the week, Monday through Friday. 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock. There's somebody here that can let you come down here and let you wander around and just go back in time and enjoy it. I can't believe that his family and his kids and people who knew him walked down here without feeling the presence.
I'm glad that he did it. I mean, it was interesting, and he was really proud of it. And I think the whole family's proud that he did it, because it started out with one churn and turned into 600 items. So, yeah, we're proud of him.
Thanks for watching. Join us again on Common Ground. If you have an idea for Common Ground in North Central Minnesota, email us at legacy@lptv.org or call 218-333-3014. To watch Common Ground online, visit lptv.org and click Local Shows. Episodes or segments of Common Ground, call 218-333-3020. Production funding of Common Ground was made possible in part by First National Bank Bemidji, continuing their second century of service to the community. Member FDIC. Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money by the vote of the people November 4th, 2008. If you watch Common Ground online, consider becoming a member or making a donation at lptv.org.